What you see here are black-necked stilts. They live in the LA River, very close to where we live here. And this is where I got the invertebrates that we looked at on the second week of school. So these are these birds. Notice they're putting their beak down into the mud and they're grabbing little invertebrates, maybe worms, down out of there. So this animal, very beautiful. This would be has a lot of different names. There it is. Cougar, mountain lion, oops, and puma down south in South America, is what you would call it. But it does live in Southern California in the mountains that surround LA and Long Beach. And it is a carnivore. So it eats, say, rabbits, foxes, if it can, squirrels, birds, let's see, any kind of rodent, small deer if they're around. Not too many in our hills though. And it reproduces sexually. Males and females sexually. It prefers to live, it can live in a lot of different areas. It can live in a forest, shrubland, chaparral, which is what we have around Los Angeles. I think I misspelled chaparral. 2 R's. I'll get back to you on that. How does it interact with other species? It hunts. It's a predator. It doesn't have anything in Southern California that eats it. It's the only one that does eating. You might have heard an apex predator, so at the top of the food chain. And it relies on other animals, of course, to support that food chain. Environmentally, it needs water, lots of land. The way the population lives its life is that the males roam over 20, 30, up to 50 square miles. That's kind of its territory, and then it looks to mate with females. So it needs a lot of land, and of course water, and to sustain itself. And humans, the main way humans are, affecting any kind of animal is habitat destruction. So the shrubland, the chaparral that surrounds, and the forest that surround Los Angeles are getting removed, disturbed. Roads are a big problem. Roads block. Let's see if we can do a better job with that. Roads block its ability to move through different territories. R-O-A-D, let me get that brighter. And I was impressed. A bike ride I normally do along the 91 freeway out towards Riverside, I noticed that they built a big corridor underneath the 91 freeway, a big tunnel, so that animals can move back and forth between the mountain ranges above Orange County and then above Los Angeles. And how has it evolved? Just look at what the mountain lion looks like. It has, let me find my pointer. Where am I at? If you just look at its teeth, they're sharp teeth. They're not adapted for any plant material. The coloring, the coat, so the color of coat. See, it's camouflaged to blend in with the environment. And of course, you can then look at, its claws. And it has a lot of speed, so it can then ambush and attack and eat prey. So some vocabulary you need to get out of the way here. Ecology, organisms interacting with, I'm struggling to find that point. There we go. Each other, or themselves, probably be better. Each other, and their each other and their environment. Ecosystem, the community and its abiotic environment. Abiotic meaning like the dirt, the air, anything non-living. A population, a group of the same species living at one place at one time. Okay, so population, one species, one place, one time. One species, one place, one time. And community, there's a whole bunch of different species of organisms living in one area. That's what I think I meant there. Group of organisms, maybe annotate many species to clarify. And species able to breed with each other, like we mentioned, or no, we're going to do that. And produce fertile offspring. We did it in class, so I was thinking of being able to make offspring. Habitat, area where an organism lives. And autotroph, make food on its own. And the way that happens, usually but not always, on Earth, phyto. Let me erase that. Oh God. So I can't go back in the video. I'll go back and write it in after I do post-production. But we need to have sustainable communities because I'll have to do that too. Four common traits that species share. They look similar. They look similar. When they breed to make fertile offspring. Breed to make fertile offspring. They are different from other species. Different from other species. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 would be they have share a family tree. So they're on the same branch of the family tree. And the fancy word for that is phylogeny. So if you kind of looked at on an evolutionary chart, they're very similar. Challenges would be we have different kind of hybrids available. We can, like the zebra, the lion and the tiger can make those ligers. Populations that can reproduce with each other but do not. So hybrids, this is number 2. So I say they're far away from each other. Okay, they might be similar, they might genetically match up, but they might not be able to breed each other because they're not next to each other and won't be in any time. And what about things like, infertility and things like in vitro fertilization? I'm going to IVF. So if you can't breed, you're infertile. I'm a human. I'm infertile. Do I belong to that species if I can't breed and make fertile offspring? Most people say yes, you are, but by our definition, maybe not, because I can't breed and produce fertile offspring. And IVF means people can, in vitro fertilization, you can have kids without actually reproducing using a second person. And we'll get more into that later during topic 6. But animal hybrids, mules, ligers, and there's types of birds of paradise. Birds of paradise that kind of get mixed up with each other. Okay, so when species reproduce, genes are transferred between the members of the species. I exchange genes to make my kids. And during this process throughout our life, mutations occur randomly. They just happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes they're faster if you're around a lot of sun or ionizing radiation, but there's always mutations. If you have a group of organisms separated like by land, like by mountains, or water, like river, ocean, genes no longer are shared. And if they keep that isolation going, they can accumulate different mutations, and they may adapt differently to their environment. And that could lead to the development of a new species. So this is Indonesia. This is a very famous thing called the Wallace line. Wallace was a scientist. He lived around Darwin's time in the mid-1800s, 1850s, 1860s, and he came up with the idea of natural selection about the same time as Darwin did. But he lived and traveled extensively to Indonesia, and he really noticed the animals here and plants look differently than the animals over here. And he studied them very carefully, and I forget what the main differences were, but came up with this is kind of the cutoff line. You see where this is. And this means probably at some point there was a cutoff between these two areas of Indonesia, and this area developed differently because of random mutations, and all the different species of plants and animals built up differently than the mutations on the north side of the Wallace line. And here's sort of a similar thing. Over eons, there's been times where this isthmus has been underwater. So water, any organism in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific could go back and forth. But starting, I forget how long ago, 100 million years, this land rose up in the isthmus and then cut off the animals on each side of the ocean, fundamentally separating. If there's one species here and here, they're separated. Well, they're not going to be exchanging genes anymore, and they're going to definitely evolve in different ways than from each other. So they're going to get further and further apart. So if they both look like circles over time, this one might build up mutations look like a triangle. This one might build up mutations look like a square. So that's just a graphic representation. But you see it says reduction in gene flow. So basically, if you need to be in the water, you're not going to be getting over the land and moving over. All right, autotrophs can make energy either from the sun or chemicals. So make energy from the sun or chemicals. Plants like we're used to, or there's some under the ocean that can make energy from heat and sulfur. So make energy from the sun, chemicals. So we got plants, or grass, tree, phytoplankton, and how about, let's give mistletoe. On heterotrophs, now actually mistletoe probably, because that's kind of a combination there. Mistletoe, they're kind of like both, so you just can add that. And we'll say an apple tree. Maybe like a maple tree. I got my examples. Heterotrophs need to eat to get energy. Let's either take food in, just eating it, or absorbing it through its membranes. So we'll get to that in a second. So humans, we'll say fungus. And then, oh yeah, say the mountain lion. And then an elephant. Okay, those are 4 heterotrophs, most of the animals. So how paramecium eats. So food enters the oral groove. And then creates a vesicle. Which is what you see here, or vacuole. And those are just little pouches with the food, and then over time enzyme digests the food, and then that food enters the paramecium's cytoplasm, and it gets the energy from it. But yeah, right through the oral groove. Now deer and lion, deer eat vegetation, so leaves, grass, berries, okay, any kind of plant material. And then lion only meat, so hunt prey. Like deer, well, there's a lot of deer-like species in Africa, and then mountain lion will eat deer too. And things that saprotrophs eat, let's see. Oh, come on, my pen. So it's basically what, anything that's dead. So dead leaves, tree bark, feces, dead algae, anything dead. And detritivores, so detritivores eat the dead stuff. Saprotrophs sit on it and absorb it, and we'll go over, I guess we'll do there. Coyote, detritivore, vulture. So saprotrophs, digestion takes place externally. So outside the body, and then absorbs the nutrients. So like a fungus will sit on top of, say, feces or dead stuff, and then release enzymes that slowly digest that material, where it'll then absorb it. And saprotrophs, bacteria, and fungi. And so what's happening here, you have a dead stump, tree stump, and then you have fungus all over it. And they are digesting and absorbing the nutrients from the wood. Okay, so the fungus slowly digesting and then absorbing those nutrients.